Hello, everyone, and welcome to Modern Architecture at Scale. We're going to be talking about architecture for the web today. This is a really exciting event for us. We have a whole bunch of really cool things to announce about the way that Netlify has been growing and scaling ourselves, but also the way that we've been allowing other devs to scale using our platform. So we're going to be talking a lot about that. You're going to hear from a lot of great people. Um, and I'm just so excited about it myself because I've loved to see this transition of the Jamstack from being kind of a niche idea that was building on some ideas as old as the internet to being something that is starting to power some of the biggest companies out there, that's starting to power some really exceptional web experiences. And I just can't wait to see what keeps happening in this space as we continue to grow and scale. So today, what we want to talk about is we're going to be talking to a handful of people from around the company. We're going to have some announcements. We're going to do a couple demos. It's going to be great. But before we get into that, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. So, first and foremost, you will be able to see the lounges up here at the top of the screen. Make sure you click into those to check things out. You can also turn on the closed captioning at any point by clicking this little CC button down in the bottom left here, bottom right, and then we are also going to be abiding by a code of conduct today. So make sure you go and you visit this link here, this ntl.fyi/code, to review that code of conduct and just make sure you treat everybody with respect. Um, so with that, why don't we go ahead and jump into our first thing of the day? I'm so excited to be talking to Matt Biilmann here, who is the CEO of Netlify. We're going to be talking just a little bit about what scale really means and how the Jamstack impacts that. So, Matt, why don't you come ahead and join me on the stage here? Hey, Matt, how you doing?
Hey Jason, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited to be talking to you today. I think this is going to be so much fun, and I honestly, I'm just going to jump right into it if you don't mind.
Absolutely, let's do it.
Okay. So I want to talk about just the Jamstack in general, right? We've been seeing a lot of people starting to pick up this flow and adopt it. In your experience, how does the Jamstack development workflow, when a team adopts it, what are the benefits they start to see inside of their company?
Yeah, of course. Like some of the inherent characteristics of the Jamstack are what have allowed us to build platforms around this field of development that really helps teams move faster, right? And I think in general, what we've aimed to do is really reducing the friction from
Hmm.
writing code to getting that code in front of the world and getting it out there, right? We've tried really help teams improve their cycle time that it takes to getting from an idea to something that's live in the world. And I think cycle time is just in general one of these operational metrics that's most defining for like how fast can you move as a company. And part of
Hmm.
this comes from just this general idea of decoupling the web UI part from all the different APIs and services. And especially if you're operating in a larger enterprise context, right, you'll be operating on top of a ton of services that have very different operational constraints and that might be slower to roll out or faster to roll out. But once you sort of standardize on one layer from the web UI, you should be able to move at a pace for that web UI that's as high as it gets, right?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so I mean, there are a lot of big benefits there, but I think one of the things that's going to be on everybody's mind when they start considering this is the adoption path. Is this something where if you want to adopt the Jamstack, you've got to be willing to go all in on it and rebuild the whole app from scratch, or is there an incremental path?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely important especially when you're talking to enterprise customers and when you're operating at a certain scale, that you understand that everybody, like people are not coming with one greenfield project and everything is new and shining, right? People are coming with lots of existing infrastructure, lots of surface area, and trying to replace everything in one go is typically a bad idea, right? Like so what we've seen as an adoption pattern has typically been starting in one place. Is that in some cases we've seen what we call the gradual migration approach, where you sort of put a Jamstack project in front of your existing web project, and you just set up proxy rules to say anything that's not part of our Jamstack project, just proxy it through to our
Mm.
original legacy dynamic service, right? And then you start rolling out more and more URLs, more and more pages with the Jamstack approach, and you can sort of gradually start migrating away from your legacy origin. The other piece is just inherently the idea of the Jamstack is to decouple the web UI and then talk to these different APIs and services. That also means that you can only often take your legacy system and expose them as APIs. We see this a lot in the world of large DXP systems, where rather than trying to whole scale migrate away from a system like Sitecore, Adobe Experience Manager, you started essentially using their Experience Manager as your headless content database.
Mm.
You wrap them in API layers that allow you to consume the same data, the same content, but decouple the web UI layer so your front end teams can start adopting modern frameworks and can start benefiting from the pace of development that the Jamstack allows.
And so that's exciting because what you're saying is that it's not even necessarily a full slow incremental adoption. You're not necessarily required to even get rid of a decent chunk of your architecture. You can keep most of what you've built and just put this decoupled web layer on top of it, right?
Yeah, we are absolutely seeing companies do that at a starting point, right, and then move further and further into the decoupled approach as they see the results, both from a cycle time and development productivity perspective, but of course also from an end user perspective in terms of like better performance, better experiences, higher conversion rate, and better uptime.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So we're starting to see bigger and bigger companies come on, and we're going to be talking about some of who those companies are in a minute with some of our new folks. But um, as you've seen companies that are at the enterprise scale start to adopt the Jamstack, are you seeing any special considerations that they need to keep in mind as they start adopting this Jamstack architecture?
Of course, right? Like, of course, there are pieces of this that applies to everybody from a hobby developer to a team at a large enterprise, right? Like everybody wants reduced friction and they want to move faster, right? But large enterprises and large customers are also really big, complex organization with often many different business units executing across very different projects. They'll have very different types of projects, often using different technology stacks, right? Like no really big global company will have standardized like on one framework for everything, and they'll not be able to, right? So it's important that you can operate in that world of complexity. It's has been important to us to build out what we call our grid product that we'll talk more about later today,
Mhm.
to allow large organizations to structure their teams into organizations with individual billing rules, individual setups for their different properties. Of course, when you're a big company and you're operating like truly mission critical properties, right? And some of the things that are running on our network today is absolutely mission critical. Like you have to have a different level of guarantees around uptime, and uptimes can both comes from like the platform infrastructure level, but obviously uptime also depends on the code you ship, right? Like
Mhm.
it's fine that the CDN is running, but if you just manage to ship a big mistake to production, then that's also downtime, right?
Right.
So having reliable release processes and reliable workflows for teams working together to ship fast but correctly is incredibly important. And then the guarantee of instant rollbacks is
Right.
incredibly important, right? Because there's a very big difference of shipping a mistake to a mission critical web property with millions of visitors and having it live for 30 minutes because you don't like because the rollback process is complex, or shipping that mistake immediately, detecting it and having it gone, right? Like
Right.
um, the faster you can roll back, the faster you can also ship with confidence.
Well, and thinking about that too, the impact that that would have, I'm thinking back to my days in enterprise software of pager duty, and when you'd
Yeah.
get paged at 10 p.m. You're trying to hang out with your family, but you get this page duty because the website's down, and then it's like, oh boy, now I'm going to spend 5 hours dealing with this problem and not get to sleep tonight. Versus being able to just open up the dashboard and click that rollback button and like, okay, I'm just going to go back to my evening now. We'll deal with that problem in the morning.
Absolutely. And it also ties into like the general observability properties of the platform, right? Again, if you are a large team of many different developers operating a mission critical property, you need to have insights into all the operational properties. That's been a driver behind our observability work and our recent Datadog integration. And generally, we're looking to integrate with all the best in class vendors in that field, right? We know that big companies will already have established methods of observing and managing the operations of their properties, and we need to be able to strengthen those rather than weaken them, right? So it's important we have great integrations there, and we can help teams immediately identify when
Mhm.
something goes wrong, what went wrong, or to just generally understand how their system is performing. Audit logging is another element that's, of course, really important, right? Like you need to be able to quickly see who did what and when, if you're a big team troubleshooting and a sudden issue.
Absolutely. So when we just talked about one big change, I think, which is that when you adopt the Jamstack, you have this kind of built-in disaster recovery and
Yeah.
this extra layer of observability. Are you seeing any other major shifts in the way that teams work together or in the way that their workflows operate as they start to adjust or adopt the Jamstack workflow?
I mean, one of the core changes that we introduced to these kind of workflows was the idea of deploy previews, right? And
Mm,
of really tying into the workflow that development teams have already established around the pull requests or merge requests and so on. And this idea that every pull request will give you a URL that you can work on, that you can do that runs on the full production infrastructure, right? Like it's not
mhm,
like some separate staging environment that may or may not be the same, right? It's the same as the production infrastructure, same edge rules, same edge logic applied to every route, as your production environment. This has been extremely important for the workflow. And of course, we've really invested in building tooling on top of that. So now teams on top of the deploy previews get a Netlify drawer with all the context around the pull requests, with direct integration into the different
mhm.
project management systems. And again, we are always looking into like we will assume that these enterprise teams are already using best in class tooling, right? So we're today also rolling out support for Jira, um, and helping team cross those boundaries between the developers working in GitHub, between QA teams, product managers, designers, that all need to be involved in the process of how do we go from a pull request to an actual release? How do we make the collaborative project process around going from code to live as frictionless as possible and as fast as possible? And how do we give teams high confidence that once something goes out there, it's the right thing?
That's such a powerful thing too, because, again, going back to my days of working in big teams, when we would ship a change, that change would we would get feedback in Word docs, we would get feedback in emails, we'd get feedback in issues, in chat, and we had to spend all this time triaging those. So the fact that, with these deploy previews and the collaborative nature of them, you can take screenshots right from the deploy preview and it posts to Jira and it posts to you can just post it to all the places that you're already working
Yeah, and
and
we
see that
really
feedback in
tie it
context.
all, like we really try to tie everything together into the Git provider you're using, whether that's a self-hosted GitLab instance or GitHub Cloud. We try to make sure that when someone opens a new Jira ticket around the pull request, like we will send that information back and link it from the pull request. We'll link from the Jira ticket to the pull request. We'll try to really get rid of this fragmentation of feedback for the developers and
Mm,
make sure that that the deploy preview is sort of just a source of truth that can really help them figure out, like, is this ready to go live or not?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's such a big benefit to teams, especially knowing from working across marketing and design where they don't want to be in GitHub issues. They don't want to look at code, but we do need their feedback. It's so
Yes.
important to get. So making that it's such a nice thing to have. Um, so I think one other question that I've got here is that as we're starting to expand and as we're starting to see a bigger and broader Jamstack ecosystem, we're going to get questions about scale and about how people are really going to take this to the next level. So how do you see the Jamstack evolving over the next months and years to accommodate these bigger and bigger projects that are starting to move to this architecture?
Yeah, of course. Like we've already seen through the last several years an amazing amount of innovation going on in the space, right? And we're seeing a lot of venture capital flow into the space in general, both to platform like ours, but also to all the different API vendors in the space, building solutions for e-commerce, content, search, logistics, analytics, all of this, right? And we'll only see that whole ecosystem evolve. And of course, as the whole Jamstack ecosystem evolves, it becomes more and more important for us to really act as someone that can unify the Jamstack ecosystem to create the best experience for developers building for the modern web, right? We have to make sure that we can help teams navigate the complexity of all these different APIs and services, help them establish patterns for how to query different services, how to work with a set of APIs and services. We have to look into, like, how can we tie the deploy preview experience to features like branching in modern cloud-based databases, and extend on the workflows we're building on. And then, of course, for enterprise clients, they also typically, when they want to build on a stack like this, they want a partner, not just a vendor, right? Like,
Right.
so making sure that we are able to support this whole ecosystem, whichever framework you're using, whichever tool set you're using, that you have a partner that can help guide you towards best practices and towards the best results. That's also part of what's going to be really important for massive enterprise adoption.
I think that's so exciting, and seeing some of the space that's coming out with, as you mentioned, like branchable cloud databases and the ease with which we're seeing people just be able to spin up a whole app as a single web developer or as a single front end team. That is really amazing with between the databases and the other platform as a service infrastructure, the power of serverless functions, kind of putting all that in the middle, and the local development experience that we're putting together with Netlify Dev and Netlify CLI, so that you can just get up and running and have everything run on your local machine the way that it runs in production. It really feels like we're the at the kind of just the early days of how powerful this really can be and how much people will be able to go and accomplish. Um, so I guess I is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you that you're really excited to talk about?
I mean, I think what you mentioned is really key, right? That the Jamstack, it's not like some vertical stack for a specific type of product, right? It's really like the fundamentals. The fundamental piece of it is this idea that we're decoupling the web UI layer from the backend business logic layer and turning all these different pieces of the business logic into APIs and services that you can put together in new ways, right? And I think one of the core benefits of that, especially for large organizations, is that you can start adopting one workflow across all the different properties you manage, right? Like before, you would always have a completely different workflow if you were building an e-commerce site with Magento versus a SaaS application with Ruby and Rails, right? Like all the tooling would be different the whole way through, right? As you start adopting this decoupled approach, we can more and more say, like, from the workflow and operational readiness, and from the how do we actually ship projects to users, how do we make sure they scale, they perform, how do we make sure observability is in place. The Jamstack approach starts giving you the benefit of being able to standardize on that layer and say, like, this is the way we built for the web. And then you can have all the different tool sets for the different APIs and services you're either building in-house or consuming from other providers, right? Because there, of course, you'll need very different needs, and you can swap out the framework layer for what kind of project are you building. It's obviously different what you need if you're building a micro campaign site or if you're building a SaaS application, right? But the overall workflow across all these properties can actually be the same, right? And that's one of the things I think is a real game changer from an architectural perspective, especially for large companies.
Yeah, I feel like that's been something that really shifted the way that I think about just building for the web in general, is this idea that all of these things that used to be the hardest part of getting up and running are now unified and they work the same way for every project. So I just get started and start building, and now I'm working on the idea and not on the boilerplate for the idea, or worrying about how to provision the right runtimes and containers and services that I need for the idea. I just get to make a thing reality, and that is so exciting. I think it's such a cool thing that Netlify has been part of building. It's why I joined the company. It's because I really do feel like this is something that has so much potential for changing the future of how we build for the web. Um, and with that being said, Matt, thank you so much for taking some time to talk with us today. I'm even more excited now. I can't wait to get out and just build some more amazing stuff. So yes, thank you so much, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jason.
All right, so thank you all for watching. What we're going to do next is we are going to bring on our VP of Product, Akram Hassan, and Tara Simmons, one of our product managers, to talk about what's new in Netlify Enterprise.
Thank you, Matt and Jason. I want to introduce myself. I'm Akram Hassan. I'm the new VP of Product here at Netlify. Joining me also, as you will hear in the announcement, Marcus Bragg as our new Chief Operating Officer from Zendesk, and Dana Lawson, our new VP of Engineering from GitHub. We are at a very important milestone at Netlify. We've reached 2 million Netlify developers, growing 1 million developer just 1 year. We've also added new logos, new customers, brands like Unilever, Twilio, and Medallia to our portfolio also as well. I want to talk to you a little bit about our new capabilities, things that we've recently announced, like log drains. With log drains, we've heard customers loud and clear. They have their own monitoring infrastructure in-house, and they want to be able to utilize it. And our goal is to meet customers where they are. So we're introducing integration with Datadog, providing you really better visibility into your web app, usage, allowing you to see traffic usage, function logs, and basically being able to debug and analyze issues quicker and faster as you use these different integrations too as well. We've recently, in May, talked about collaborative deploy previews. We've enabled a feature for you as a customer to actually share your deploy preview with your other disciplines, like the UX team, or like reviewers from marketing, and being able to get these comments and feedback right into your GitHub and GitLab and Linear and Trello and other tools as well. However, we're also introducing Jira for teams that use Jira for integrating feedback. You'll be able to use that right away from collaborative deploy previews. And also we're announcing support for GitLab for GitLab self-hosted instances. So if you're having your own instance of GitLab, you'll be able to utilize that with collaborative deploy previews as well. We're also announcing AWS Marketplace, availability of Netlify services in the AWS Marketplace. This means if you're a customer with commitment with AWS and you have already credits in AWS, you can use those commitments towards Netlify. So you're able to transition some of those commitments or some of those credits right into using Netlify services. That's something that we're really excited about. And then finally, we have a new enterprise grid plan for teams with multiple organizations and multiple teams, and they want to be able to have the highest level of control and security. They'll be able to see an organizational overview of all their teams and all their usage. Not only that, they will be able to have a business unit level invoicing, itemizing for each team, what kind of usage they have. And they will be able to actually have multiple HP Edge and multiple HP Build instances. And with me here, Tara, she's going to walk you through this new capability of multi-team, being able to view usage across your organization. Tara.
All right, thank you so much, Akram. So yes, expanding on that, enterprises can have large web development teams and often hundreds of web projects, each staffed with many team members. Engineering leaders want to have visibility, governance, and control to all of these projects to monitor usage and spending. But today, most teams just get bogged down coordinating tasks instead of collaborating and improving that end user experience. Enterprises also need to ensure security and compliance to avoid legal action and customer flack. So that's why Netlify is introducing a new enterprise grid plan with the ability to segment teams and projects within one enterprise instance. Before, enterprises had to create and manage separate accounts in order to segment sites and members. So now it's easier than ever for owners to manage and monitor the teams in the Netlify organization with a new organization overview page and real-time metrics about your team's usage. So now I would like to give a brief demo on the multi-team management capabilities that Enterprise Grid can offer. Okay, so today I am using a demo account, but once you have started building with Netlify, you will be able to see all of your metrics here in this hero card. So organization owners have access to this overview page, and all teams that belong to the organization can be seen here. If you'd like to have more granular detail about a team, simply just click on the team here and you'll be brought to the team overview page. I would like to note that team members that are not on the team, other teams within the organization will not have access to the other sites. So this is just helping to restrict for security purposes. So if you would like to go to your personal teams, you click back at this drop down here and you can find your personal team's workspace. I would like to show just a couple of settings within the organization overview. So if you navigate to the settings tab, you can update your name, slug, and logo directly from the app. And in the billing tab, you will have all of your contract details and your invoice history. So we do have some docs for more information. So you can navigate here to have more granular detail on organization management. All right, so basically to wrap this up, to get access to Enterprise Grid and to add more teams to your organization, you can contact your account manager from the app or reach out to them directly. And thanks so much for having me.
All right. So as you can see, we've got a lot of exciting stuff coming up. We've got Twilio, Unilever, Medallia, so many amazing companies joining the Netlify Jamstack space. We've got 2 million developers. Feels like just a year ago we were talking about having 1 million developers. So unbelievable to see the growth in this space. Super exciting. I can't wait to see how it continues to grow. So with that being said, let's just keep this on rolling. We are going to talk about operating Jamstack apps at business scale. And to do that, we're going to do this as a fireside chat. We're going to bring in Nelson Diallo, who is one of our account managers here at Netlify, and he's going to be talking about Nail Khan, who's a front-end manager at Gemini, and they're going to be just discussing how do you run a Jamstack app at business scale. So let's please welcome them to the stage.
Perfect. Thanks for that introduction, Jason. Thanks to everyone for joining and for sticking with us for this kind of the last part of today, the fireside chat. My name is, of course, Nelson Diallo. I'm representing Netlify here did want to have our guest Niall introduce himself as well. Before jumping into a few planned questions, this is, of course, a interactive session as well. So audience, please feel free to drop any questions you have for Niall into the Q&A, and we'll get those answered at the end. Niall, can you kick us off with an intro?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nelson. Thanks for the Netlify team for arranging this. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Niall. Pleasure to meet you, everybody, on the call and in the event. I'm an engineering manager at Gemini, your favorite cryptocurrency exchange. I'm managing the team that currently works on Gemini.com, the public marketing site, which is our first entry to most of the products that we offer, as well as the blog and Cryptopedia, which are great resources for all things crypto.
Awesome. Niall, thanks for the context. And I'm sure the audience would love to learn a little bit more about kind of the web projects you're working on today and some of the technologies that power them. Can you share a little bit more detail there?
For sure, yeah. So we actually have two web projects that I'd like to talk about. I'm going to focus on Gemini.com, which is our public marketing site, but I really want to mention Nifty Gateway, which is also hosted on Netlify. Nifty Gateway is a platform that's independent to Gemini, but part of our suite of products. And it's basically a trading platform for Nifties or NFTs, where you can browse and collect NFT tokens. So I'd encourage everybody to check that out, niftygateway.com. And we just recently worked on a brand new redesign and really want to highlight that for the team. And I think that's a great React app that's being hosted on Netlify. That being said, Gemini.com is what I want to focus on today. That's kind of like the bread and butter of what I'm working on at Gemini. And Gemini.com is a Next.js app that's running on Netlify. So we're still taking advantage of that hybrid static and server-side rendering that Next.js offers us. And we're also utilizing TypeScript to help us with like the code resilience and really scaling as we onboard more engineers, front-end engineers and other engineers as well. And we also have an integration that we kind of rely on with Contentful, which is a platform that we use for some of our copy updates and text content that show up on Gemini.com for some of our product pages. But yeah.
Awesome. And so good to hear about a Netlify technology partner, Contentful, being used at Gemini as well. So, we've seen crypto really boom over the past, it seems like few years. And it seems like everyone has kind of gotten on board and really gotten interested in what you're doing at Gemini. So, how does that translate to some of your web projects? And maybe how does that tie to some of the growth initiatives you're working on?
Yeah, so in this industry, growth is everything, and cryptocurrencies have been booming over like the last year. So our business, grateful to say that it has been booming as well. So with that comes a lot of technical challenges. We've actually had the most requests and the most traffic that we've ever seen on Gemini.com with the recent crypto boom over the last year. So with that comes a lot of traffic that we're obviously have to scale to deliver our pages in real time and always up to date. Netlify is really helping with that in terms of our internationalization, and the global CDN that Netlify offers us allows us to capitalize on really delivering pages as fast as possible to users across the globe. We're using Next.js, as I mentioned earlier, and that's letting us capitalize on some of the SEO benefits that comes with Next.js. So all of our pages are really pre-rendered or server-side generated, and that allows us to really capitalize on getting easily crawlable pages that can be searched and viewed by the mass public. In addition to that, as we grow, we're serving more users across the globe, as I said, and we're actually working on an initiative to localize and globalize our Gemini.com site, as well as our suite of apps, including Exchange. And that localization is going to be key to onboarding more users in an accessible way and giving them that freedom to, understand our apps and onboard to our apps in a language that's of their choice. In addition to that, I can also speak a little bit about just our growth internally. So as our teams are growing, we're offering more products, including like the Gemini credit card, Gemini Earn, which I'd encourage everybody to check out on our public site. As our teams grow, we need to be able to serve the content that those external teams really want to display on our public site. So that could mean copy changes, content changes, redesigns of the pages. And I think as we grow, our web projects need to be able to scale to meet that demand of constantly changing and updating and really thinking about what are making users convert and onboard to our Gemini platform. Finally, I think as we grow, there's front end engineers that are onboarding to our team, and our code is constantly being shipped more and more as we onboard more engineers, and we do more engineering onboarding. So our developer experience for our web projects has to be equally as scalable to encompass more engineers and let them make sure that they're shipping code efficiently and not stepping on each other's toes.
Awesome. And I can already see the Q&A is getting busy there for us, Niall, at the end. So it sounds like we'll have a pretty full session. Thanks, folks, for chiming in on Q&A. We'll get to those questions at the end. Niall, I can tell a lot of things you've been working on, localization, right? Adding new products, new functionality to the site. How has adopting Jamstack workflows with Netlify increased throughput of your team?
Yeah, so the Jamstack workflow has really worked well for us. I mean, obviously Netlify, we've been able to capitalize on utilizing Next.js with the essential Next.js build plugin that you all offer. So we're really getting access to a lot of those Next.js benefits that I previously mentioned in terms of like hybrid statics and server-side rendering, which allow us to, as a front-end team, to really determine what makes the most sense for certain pages and not have to be, opt into only one or the other, right? So it really creates this flexibility for pages that, need data, and we want to serve in the fastest way possible to utilize server-side rendering. But for other pages that might not need to be hydrated with as much data, we can use the static generation to really serve those pages. And that's really increased our performance and made it so that we don't have to think about performance all the time. We can kind of rely on the fact that we're serving pages and utilizing them on the Netlify CDN to serve it as fast as possible to our users. In addition to that, we have like one-click deploys with auto-publishing with Netlify. So that's made our deployment process so seamless, and has really made it so that we can do more deploys and ship more code faster than ever before. And finally, just to piggyback back on that contentful integration that we have, a lot of their internal teams that are not technical can make changes on contentful that automatically kick off builds on Netlify that allow them to change things on production whenever they want without any developer intervention. So that automation has been super, super key.
Awesome. Yeah. And these are, pretty typical things that we see with folks who adopt Netlify, automating deploys, right? And good to see also that you've been able to kind of bring other folks from the organization into the web stack through Contentful. So love the context there. So, another big part of what Jamstack is all about is reducing complexity. So I did want to ask you, Niall, how has adopting Netlify and the Jamstack really as a whole reduce complexity in some of the projects that you've been working on?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. I actually have a recent example of something that we worked on. So we offer this product, Gemini Earn, that allows you to earn interest on your crypto balances that you have on Gemini. It's an interesting product that always has interest rates that are obviously changing. And so on our product pages, before, what we would have to do is whenever those interest rates would change, we would need our designers to update some of those image static assets that are on our page and update them with the new percentages, the APY percentages, and then hand that over to developers and then have developers, push that to production. So it was kind of like a lengthy process, and it required a lot of manual effort as well, right? So we actually utilized a Netlify feature, Netlify custom build plugins, which allowed us to automate some of that. So what we're doing now is on every build, we actually are able to hook in to the Netlify build plugin APIs and contact our own APIs and hydrate the page with images using our own interest APIs so that we have the latest and greatest APIs showing up on the pages. So we're doing some JavaScript magic, but we're also utilizing that Netlify plugin to really make it so that we don't always have to have designer intervention and developer intervention for those dynamically generated content.
Wow. Okay. So great to hear the kind of use about Netlify build plugins too, and we always love some JavaScript magic, and I'm sure that a few learnings in there can be applied to kind of the audience's projects as well. So super interesting to hear about kind of frictionless, ways of doing new things and trying things out. So Niall, I did want to ask about, how Netlify and Jamstack has changed internal processes at Gemini. So, what have you seen as far as streamlining development cycles and, reducing time to market in some of the work that you've done?
Yeah, to talk a little bit about that, I would definitely mention deploy previews. So Netlify has enabled our team to have a really streamlined process of QAing when it comes to like visual QA and collaborating with our designers and getting their sign off as well as product manager sign off. The deploy previews that we get on every branch that developers deploy has really allowed us to kind of like test out like new pages, updates, and incremental updates, as well as like routing changes that we might want to do, utilizing kind of the routing and redirect rules that Netlify allows you to kind of tap into. So deploy previews has been like an essential process and like that streamlines what we do on our team day to day. In addition to that, the contentful integration that I talked about, really empowering the rest of our colleagues at Gemini in different departments to make changes to our site. We're thinking of continuously improving that, really making more integrations that allow us to automate some of the way that they want to lay out content. So that's something that we're actually actively working on for the rest of this year to make that process even easier as well.
Very cool. Okay. And, I know that your team, right, and you've seen this kind of tremendous growth with Gemini.com. Thanks for pointing out a few of the kind of early things that are coming up. What else gets you excited about upcoming initiatives, upcoming web projects at Gemini? What else is kind of top of mind for you looking ahead?
Yeah, I think what's exciting is really just tapping into some of those Netlify features when it comes to globalization and internationalization. Like I mentioned, that's something that's going to be on the forefront of our mind as a front end team over the next few months. And in terms of upcoming initiatives, we're really thinking about just capitalizing on that automation that we've been trying to do. Really give empower our non-technical members and users of the site that want to make changes to the site to be able to do that, whether that's with images and static content or, like I said, dynamic layouts. So I'm really, really excited about, working on those like automation and developer tooling that will really make it so that, more internal members and colleagues can contribute to the Gemini.com site without any intervention from us.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, that did wrap up the planned questions we had, Niall, but I can see that already folks have really contributed a lot here in the Q&A. For our audience here, please feel free to kind of keep dropping questions in. We'll go in the order of upvoted things and kind of take it from there. So the first question I have here is from Mark. So Mark is asking, can you please give an overview of the pros and cons of using Netlify versus AWS Amplify and the rest of the AWS stack? That's a challenging one. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the rest of the AWS stack, Niall, but maybe we can talk more about kind of some of the pros and cons of using Netlify that you've seen. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So we don't have an experience working with like AWS Amplify, so I can't make a direct comparison and give you kind of like a pros and cons between the both. But for Netlify, like I mentioned, some of the pros that we really have is utilizing those one-click and auto-publishing deploys. The integrations and accessibility for the webhooks really makes it so that we can make more powerful integrations, whether that's with our, translation vendor that we're going to use soon, or like that contentful integration that I mentioned. Those things have really made it so that we can make deployments and publish things without having, again, too much developer intervention and manual deployment processes. So I would definitely say that that's a super, really awesome pro that we've been kind of like capitalizing on by using Netlify. In addition to that, the deploy previews are second to none. I've never used a platform that had something similar. And I think it's been like an essential part of our process here at Gemini to deploy and collaborate with our product teams and design teams and let them have a lot of say and stakeholding in terms of what gets released and when. And deploy previews has really made it so that they can see what happens live and what the site might look like in a production environment. So those are two awesome pros that I would I would always mention. And if anybody mentioned Netlify, in terms of cons, we haven't really faced that many issues with Netlify, even in terms of like downtime or anything like that. The only thing that I would like to see is the incremental static regeneration that Next.js offers. That's something that Netlify took a stand on and offers a different approach, DPR, distributed persistent rendering, instead of the Next.js offering that you can get on Vercel. But I think that there's definitely workarounds and pros and cons to that approach as well.
Totally, yeah, and there's actually quite a lot of documentation around kind of Netlify's distributed persistent rendering. On-demand builders, of course, supports kind of that with our Next.js plugin as well. So understood there, and love the feedback, Niall. Really appreciate that. Next question we have here is from Henrik. How do you integrate server-side rendering into Netlify? Niall, do you have a take on that, since you've been doing kind of a mix of both, as you mentioned?
Yeah, so we actually utilize Next.js for the server-side rendering, and that's fully supported by Netlify with the essential Next.js plugin that they offer. So our site basically generates. We can opt in using get server-side props, a function that Netlify framework, Next.js framework offers you to basically hydrate our pages with a subset of data that we want to fetch during build time. The essential build plugin, essentially what it does on Netlify is that it will run those functions beforehand and generate those pages and create them as like static pages on the Netlify CDN to be served.
Very cool. Yeah, and that's pretty typical of what we see as well, right? With this kind of updated Next.js plugin, folks are able to use the get server-side props functionality and again, kind of build really dynamic experiences. So that's super exciting. Thanks, Henrik, for a great question. Mm-hmm.
I will say a little bit more about that. There's also other frameworks that you can use, like Gatsby and Jekyll, and even Nuxt if you use like Vue, that will also allow you to bake kind of that server-side rendering into your app and host that on Netlify as well.
Cool. Thanks. Next one we have here is from Jonas. So we'll keep going down the list. How can I build a site on Netlify and still avoid vendor lock-in? Is maybe a good question here to think about with Niall. Is how do you think about vendor lock-in? I also have some thoughts on it too, if you don't have anything there.
Yeah, I'd love for you to go into it a little bit more.
Okay, yeah, cool. Basically, I hear you, Jonas. The question is, how do you avoid vendor lock-in? The most frequent thing I see is like folks want to avoid vendor lock-in because they want their tech stack to be future-proof. So I think by being technology agnostic, right, Netlify allows you to bring the framework of your choice, right, the static site generator of your choice, and really build and deploy that on kind of a platform that was built to build and deploy Jamstack applications. I'd say that's really where we're going. We want to empower folks to choose the technology of their choice. We're building out technology partnerships really so that you can add functionality and use the microservices you need. But of course, this is all just empowering a Git-based workflow. So, developers continue to work with the tools that they want to, and Netlify hopefully, empowers them and makes their development processes easier and faster.
Yeah, I will piggyback on that. Like I mentioned before, you can bring the framework of your choice and like the technology of your choice and use that on Netlify. I think they make it very open to and encompass several different like popular frameworks, and even allow you to just serve a static site if you want, like plain old index HTML and CSS and JS, and serve that from their CDN. So I think there's a lot of flexibility, and I think Netlify does allow you to avoid that vendor lock-in. You can also take that same app that you're deploying, not use it on Netlify, and move to something else at a later time if you want to. But I think there's a lot of flexibility and openness when it comes to the technologies that you use and utilizing them on Netlify.
Awesome. Cool. So looks like we are coming up on time, just about a minute left. We'll try and squeeze just a couple more of these audience questions in. And thanks again to everyone for really deep, thorough questions. So looks like the next question here is, are there comparative numbers in terms of before and after leveraging Netlify? So maybe for the Gemini team, that looks like a pre-migration state and post-migration state. Do you have any metrics, anything carried over on that side now?
We don't have any metrics, unfortunately. We went with Netlify first, but we did consider Vercel instead. I think that's a direct competitor when it comes to especially Next.js applications that are being deployed. And I think Netlify has just made it a much more easier and friendlier UI that we prefer. I think deploy previews was a deal breaker, so I think that's also another baked-in feature that you're going to want. And once you use, you're not going to want to, leave or get rid of that feature. In terms of comparative numbers, we don't have any, but I will say that we've scaled amazingly over the course of like the last year using Netlify as we onboarded. Nelson, what was our request count and our traffic count?
Yeah. I was excited to see Gemini surpass the 1 billion monthly web requests. So really, that's a high traffic site, right? And as we talk about Jamstack at scale, I'd say, that's really an awesome example. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like as crypto has become more talk of the town, I feel like we've been seeing more and more requests. So I can say wholeheartedly that we've like scaled very efficiently with Netlify, and we haven't seen any issues. So in terms of just as our traffic count and our visitors have increased, we really haven't really seen any issues with that.
Cool. Awesome. We are at time, so I'll say thanks to everyone who joined. Sorry we couldn't get to all the questions, but there is, of course, a contact Netlify form here on the site, and I think many of these questions are also answered by what's in our documentation and on our customer stories page. Thanks again, Niall, for kind of an awesome talk and awesome web project that you've worked on with us as far as Gemini.com. So good to be with you, and thanks again for everyone who joined.
Absolutely. Thanks everybody. Thanks, Nella.
All right. Thank you, Nelson and Niall. Really appreciate that discussion. I think the questions were wonderful. Thank you for everybody watching for submitting excellent questions. And so that is it for our event. We will be sending out this recording soon, so keep an eye on your email for a link to the recording if you want to review or revisit any part of this. Also, make sure that you head up to the lounge, which you can find up here. That will be full of Netlify staffers if you've got additional questions, so you can jump in there to ask additional questions or just get more information. And make sure that if you are interested in any of the things that we dropped today, the new Enterprise Grid package, you can reach out to our sales team and we would love to talk to you. If you're already a customer and you're interested in upgrading, make sure you reach out to your account executive and they will be happy to give you more details about the plan. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us today. I'm really, really excited for the future of the Jamstack and for what I think you'll be able to build if you adopt this infrastructure. Thanks, y'all. We'll see you next time.